time in Mexico, 2 a.m. In Britain, it's 9 a.m. Tommie Smith and John Carlos, the two great American Negro sprinters, give the Black Power salute as they receive their medals.
Tommie Smith and John Carlos led an emotional, powerful, and motivational stand against racism and inequality by raising their fists during the national anthem during the 1968 Mexico City Summer Olympics. Their stand is significant because it started a dialogue about racial oppression and how many minorities didn't feel that the flag and the ideals that it symbolizes represented the entirety of the United States. Using the national anthem as a way to protest and make a point was incredibly controversial then and still is today. However, Smith and Carlos have inspired others to take a stand for similar issues through the national anthem, and by using a sporting event, they brought the uncomfortable and complex issue of racial oppression and equality for all into many American homes. The Star-Spangled Banner. It wasn't always the national anthem for the United States, let alone played before most sporting events. At a hot and humid World Series baseball game between the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs, fans were starting to get bored during the slow-paced game that took place on September 5, 1918. So, the band began playing the Star-Spangled Banner during the middle of the 7th inning. The fans quickly took to their feet and stood at rapt attention through the ballad. Not only did they do this at that game, they did it again for the rest of the homestand during the 7th inning. When the Red Sox returned home, they changed it from the middle of the 7th inning to the beginning of the game. This powerful song instilled the sense of a greater unity among the people in attendance. Later, on March 3, 1931, the Star-Spangled Banner was ratified as the national anthem, after having already been the unofficial anthem across most sports. However, not all people felt that the new anthem or other symbols of America truly represented all Americans. This time was juxtaposed by a paramounting racial divide across the United States. Wherever you looked, the nation was in the midst of healing itself after a lengthy battle of segregation and people not willing to change their viewpoints from their current states. From 1964 to 1968, race riots were taking place throughout the nation in hundreds of United States cities, crying out to fix the problems of the supposedly equal African Americans like low income, high unemployment, and social exclusion. This did not bode well within the white community, leading them to elect the law and order candidate Richard Nixon as their president, who believed in not using federal power to provide aid to the disadvantaged African Americans. John Carlos and Tommie Smith were two of the first athletes to protest racial injustices during a major sporting event. Their stand happened during the 1968 Summer Olympic Games that took place in Mexico. Earlier in the week, 3 African American 400-meter sprinters had donned black berets and took the podium with their fists clenched in the form of the Black Power salute. But before the anthem played, they took the berets off and lowered their hands. However, when John Carlos took the gold medal and Tommie Smith took the bronze, they ascended the podium with no shoes on, their fists clenched in the air, and their heads bowed, and did not change their stature until the end of the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner. Later, the duo said that their lack of shoes signified the poverty within the black community, their clenched fists represented strength and unity, and their bowed heads showed their dissent to the national anthem and how it did not hold the same values for that nation's African-American population as it did for the rest of the populace. After their protest, they were suspended from the Olympic team and were ordered to leave the Olympic Village immediately. On their return to the United States, they faced strong disapproval from the public, even though the Olympic Games had been used to start political discussions before their actions. Although shadowed by their suspension, they were the face of the 1968 Mexico City Olympics, not Dick Fosbury in his newfangled way in jumping in the high jump, nor Jim Hines becoming the first person to break the 10-second barrier in the 100-meter dash.
Good morning to you. The Olympic Games are 1 week old today, and yesterday, the 6th day, was the most dramatic so far. It started with the news that the Black Power disciples Tommie Smith and John Carlos, the Olympic 200 meters gold and bronze medalists, had been suspended by the United States Olympic Committee and given 48 hours to leave Mexico.
I had said that if
This stand, led by the courageous Tommie Smith and John Carlos, created the platform for more people to stand up and show their dissent towards the song that is supposed to proclaim freedom for the American people. In an interview with Dave Zirin, Tommie Smith and John Carlos speak out about the reasoning for protesting the national anthem.
The right place to do this kind of thing. You ought to use this as a kind of world stage.
David, since we are athletes, although I am a teacher, but I'm not a politician, we use this so the whole world could see the poverty of the black man in America.
At the same time, cynics might say that you've got it all. You've got publicity, you've got medals, you've got martyrdom as well. What are you going to say to that?
I can't eat that, and the kids around my block that grew up with me, they can't eat it. And the kids that's going to grow up after them, they can't eat publicity. They can't eat gold medals, as Tommie Smith said. All we ask for is an equal chance to be a human being. And As far as I see now, we're 5 steps below the ladder. And every time we try and touch the ladder, they put their foot on our hands and don't want us to climb up.
And this goes to what you were saying about the athletes, getting the chance to show their wares, but you all in '68, you were willing to not run that year, right?
Right.
Because of wanting to make a statement in what you believed in.
Right.
How difficult was that, thinking about that?
Well, it wasn't difficult for me at all. It wasn't difficult for me at all because I'll evaluate the Olympic Games as a track meet. You know, I've been in many track meets. But the bottom line is whether we can make a statement for society. I feel like, medals are great, but medals are nowhere near close to what life is all about. Now, for instance, a lot of people was upset with Jimmy Carter when Jimmy Carter boycotted against the Russians in the Olympics. Oh, he shouldn't have did it. He shouldn't have did it. But Jimmy Carter's philosophy was that I feel that life is far more valuable than Olympic medals. Only difference that with me in that 45-year span is I began to look at who was the sacrificial lambs. The athletes are the ones that's hurt, the spectators are the ones that's hurt, and the powers to be that we really the one that we trying to get their attention to have some compassion and consideration to change their ways. They're still making their money. The Olympic Committee is still selling sponsorship. They still signing boycott the games. You've forgotten cause. Just by the grace of God, what I say, what happened to us in Mexico City was a spiritual thing. God stepped in. Everything fell right. Like I stated earlier, this is the first time the game was televised universal on this planet. This is the first time the game was televised in color. This is the first time the games was held in a third world nation.
Although their dissent was met with backlash across the nation, it has inspired many other athletes to protest during their events for the common reason of equality and fundamental human rights. Athletes throughout the ages since Tommie Smith and John Carlos in 1968 have protested the national anthem and other patriotic songs. In 1996, Abdul Rauf, formerly known as Chris Jackson before converting to Islam, called the flag a symbol of oppression and of tyranny, and that by supporting the flag, he is supporting the oppression proclaimed by the flag and its ideals which are entirely against the Muslim faith. He was cited by the NBA and was suspended a game under the league rule that all players have to stand and line up in a dignified posture during the American and Canadian national anthems. After serving his one-game suspension, he observed and followed the rule by standing with his head bowed and his hands over his eyes, saying a silent Muslim prayer instead of placing his hand on his heart. Lastly, the man who has catapulted this controversy back into the spotlight, Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick started his silent protest of standing for the national anthem during one of his NFL preseason games in the year 2016. When asked why he was not standing, but sitting for the national anthem, he responded by saying, "I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder." All of these athletes, Tommie Smith and John Carlos included, share something in common. They share their devotion to creating a place where equality comes as a civil right, something that cannot be denied and something not only a few get, but everyone, whether they are African American, illegal immigrants, or non-English speakers, gets the right to equality as soon as they step foot in the land of the free and the home of the brave.